As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest tonight. Jason Burack from WallStreetForMainStreet.com is here with us on Reluctant Preppers. He's going to give us a insider's look at the 2017 road ahead, a 2017 preview, and talking about higher minimum wage, minimal savings on the part of U.S. Citizens, cashless society, and big banks already failing their stress test. But first of all, we'll start off with the Trump inauguration and what that means for our country. Jason, thanks for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thanks, DK. I'm glad to be back. Your channel's just been growing like crazy lately.
We've sure been benefiting a lot from so much concern on the people have, real concern, ordinary people have about the malpractice that's been foisted on them by central banks, by career politicians, and corruption in all ranks. And they're really concerned about the risks to their family. And you guys have been covering risks to real people for a long time on Wall Street for Main Street. So thanks for joining us again here to kind of give us an update on the research that you're doing. Could you start us off this week? When we're recording this is going to be the Trump inauguration week. So can you kick us off with your view of the Trump factor? What is the impact likely to be, in your view, on Main Street well-being from the beginning of a Trump presidency?
I'm cautiously optimistic that Donald Trump can really help small and medium-sized businesses. Yes, some of the people that he is bringing into his cabinet, they do have some, tendencies towards corruption and padding their own pockets, but they also have the talent, the experience on the business side in the private sector, unlike other past presidents when they pick cabinets, how it's mostly like politicians, bureaucrats, crony friends, political favors. The talent level is there to help improve the real economy for the person on Main Street. Will it actually be done? I don't know. Trump is inheriting an enormous disaster. Even before Trump gets into office, DK, now that the election is over, the Democrats and Hillary Clinton have tried in so many clever, weird ways to steal the election, even talking about getting rid of the Electoral College. This has been reality TV. This is as good as almost any scripted Hollywood drama that we've had during the election cycle. I can't remember anything that I've ever witnessed in an past election cycle as an adult being anywhere close to this. And I think a lot of it is because of the internet and social media and candidates like Donald Trump just giving a middle finger to the mainstream media that he doesn't like the way they cover him in certain instances, and just going over people's heads directly to social media. And then, basically we'd see after every single tweet, Donald Trump, right? CNN or some of the other guys on mainstream media that hate Trump, they'd just spend hours talking about every single tweet. It was just crazy. The drama level. I don't like a lot of the things about Trump. First of all, I've read all of Trump's business books, so I think he's actually a good real estate investor, and he's a brilliant marketer. He's actually very clever at getting himself free advertising. But I am cautiously optimistic that he can fix certain things in the real economy, but I'm very worried about his protectionist policies with the tariffs. A lot of people who have studied economic history think that will be what will help the American economy get fixed, and I don't think so. I think what can help fix the American economy and really help people on Main Street get more prosperous and create more jobs is reducing the regulations and red tape and small business taxes like the Obamacare tax and all the payroll tax. And basically, when I talk to small business people on my podcast with the feedback, what they tell me in the past is that there was just so much rules and regulations and taxes and red tape that they were scared, even though they saw opportunity to want to add more employees, they were scared to want to make a lot of investments into a lot of full-time employees here in the United States because of, once I hire full-time employees, there's all these extra commitments. They could sue me potentially later and all these other things. So hopefully Donald Trump and more of the experienced business people he will bring into the cabinet will help fix this. But what we do know through history, and I enjoy studying history probably more than other guests, is, a lot of politicians throughout history, many different countries, have a really hard time of doing what they say. So yes, on paper, some of Trump's ideas sound really, really good. And the Make America Great Again was a great slogan. Drain the Swamp was a great slogan for marketing. It definitely helped rally a lot of people behind him and do research on him. But I'm not sure that that's, he's actually going to end up doing what he's saying. So I'm skeptical he will do what he says. The mainstream media with the polls right now and his unfavorability rating being lower than everyone else's, that's totally ridiculous. He hasn't even been in office 6 months or 12 months. Let's be like Nicole Kidman, who publicly spoke out on Hollywood. She may be blacklisted now. She's going to have to backtrack. Let's be like Jim Brown, former professional NFL running back. Let's give Trump a chance. Let's give him 6 months or 12 months. Let's see what he does rather than just what he says. Let's see what he actually can get done. He's inheriting a huge disaster from not just Obama, but from the bureaucracy and other previous presidential administrations. This has been a problem, DK, that's been growing and festering really since before 1971, but it accelerated after the dollar's last vestiges of the gold standard. And, 2017, if I had to sum up what I think 2017 is going to be, it's going to be very volatile in terms of the policy measures that the people in power are going to try to maintain to try to keep calm. And I also think that 2017 is going to be the year where the people in power, they're going to be spinning. You know how at the circus, there's like that circus act where either there's one or two people and they have those really high poles and they're spinning the plates.
Yeah.
And they have to run all up and down the line of poles, right, to keep all the plates spinning.
Right.
So that's what I would say the central planners after the 2008 financial collapse, to try and delay another financial collapse as long as possible. That's what they've been doing. Okay, so they've been able, for the most part, to prevent any of the plates from falling. So they've stopped major stock market crashes. They've stopped bond market crashes. We've had volatility in commodities. Some of it's been manipulated. Some of it has not been manipulated. Some of it's been, based on Federal Reserve credit or Wall Street credit for the shale bubble, et cetera. But, I think we're in a very, very large and expanding economic minefield. So imagine being, the central planners, the politicians, the central bankers, the bureaucrats, the people who were at Davos over the weekend with their anti-drone guns and, trying to plot ways to either get Trump impeached or limit him to one term. I just think it's really not fair what they've done with Trump. But, their agenda is globalism, and Trump's not part of that crowd anymore. Obviously, he was part of that crowd at one point. And he left the Democratic Party and he became basically an independent and used the Republican ticket to win the election that way. But, we should have a smooth transition of power now that the election's over. Like Nicole Kidman and Jim Brown have said, we should give Trump a chance, at least 6 or 12 months, to see what he can accomplish out of his goals, right? We should at least be cautious but skeptical, see what he can do. I'm going to be that way with Trump. I don't fully trust him, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for 6 or 12 months to see what he can get accomplished, although, a lot of his policies aren't free market and aren't libertarian. But what worries me the most is if he starts a really large trade war with China and starts putting up, huge tariffs on Chinese goods, because that could start a lot of inflation. It could escalate a trade war. It could lead to the Chinese potentially either restricting or eliminating rare earth elements to key military usages here in the U.S. and also to high-end electronics. So many of the smartphones and tablets and all the things that we take for granted and use every day, these things have lots of rare earths in them. And China has a monopoly both on mining them because they've destroyed their environment, and no one else on planet Earth can mine at those low costs because China is basically destroying their environment to mine at a lower cost than anyone else on the planet with elements. And China also has a monopoly throughout the value chain out of all the rare earth elements, whether you're making rare earth oxide, rare earth metals, rare earth alloys, rare earth magnet powders, rare earth permanent magnets, although Japan makes some rare earth permanent magnets. But remember, a few years ago, 2011 or 12, China started restricting exports of rare earth materials to Japan, and that caused a big problem for Japan too. So I'm worried about that as well going forward. But I mean, we should have a peaceful transition now, DK, through to Trump's election. And yet here we have in the news stories with Project Veritas videos breaking of Disrupt J20, Scumbag of 2016, Scumbag of the Year award winner, George Soros, who also deserves a Lifetime Achievement Award for being a total scumbag. He's been, funding these groups to divide us by race, gender, age, class, pretty much any way that he can divide us so the global elites can plunder us. And Soros is funding these now domestic terrorist groups that are J20. And, I have no problem at all with exercising your First Amendment rights and doing peaceful protests. But if you look at the videos and see what these guys have plans, they're claiming it was a junior high school prank with this butyric acid stink bombs. They're claiming it was a junior high school prank. But when you go and see that they coordinated things and they, did recon at the building, this is domestic terrorism. OK, so I don't know if the FBI is going to actually charge them or Secret Service or the DC police are going to actually arrest and charge these guys, but they should. I have a ticket to the deplorable on Thursday. I was going to go. I'm still thinking about it right now. I probably will still go because I've heard that security is going to be ramped up. But I mean, this is scary times we live in. You would think that people would say, you know what, we'll wait. The Democrats would say, you know what, we didn't win this time. In 4 years, we'll make sure Trump doesn't get reelected. That's not what I'm hearing. I don't know about you, DK, but that's not what I'm hearing when I check on Twitter for Democrat posts or see my Democrat friends on Facebook post. They're basically looking for, anything they could do to impeach Trump. And they're even discussing in certain cases, violent stuff. So, I think, besides the volatility in markets that the central planners have created by trying to delay the next crisis, we're also having rapidly rising civil unrest. And I think a lot of it's because of the Hollywood celebrities that are, promoting this agenda, and George Soros and the other globalists that are also paying people to promote this agenda.
You mentioned Washington, D.C. as a potential target for domestic terrorism. You and I met there in person at the Ron Paul Peace and Prosperity Institute conference a couple months ago. And his son, Rand Paul, is currently re-announcing his plans to reopen his Audit the Fed proposal, perhaps with a more friendly Congress and certainly with a more friendly White House. Do you believe, in your view, that we will see an audit of the Fed? And if we do, what that impact will be?
Well, I don't know if Trump's going to get behind it. So Rand Paul has said that Trump said he's behind it. Obviously, I like Rand Paul and what Thomas Massie, they're the co-signers of the bill, are trying to do. But, the rest of Congress, the regular Republicans, the rhinos, the rhino Republicans, the neocons like John McCain and other scumbags that are really corrupt and are basically backed by either Wall Street or the military industrial complex, I don't see any way they're going to go for it. And the Democrats, most of the Democrats, they claim to say they do rhetoric in public saying they hate the banks and they hate capitalism and they hate large corporations, but follow the money. Look at where, like, people like Nancy Pelosi, right? She got a favorable $5 million, basically bribe from Visa on a stock IPO a couple of years after 2008 crash. So these guys are getting, this is what I went back to earlier in the interview, what I said about politicians doing what they say. So most politicians don't do what they say. Ron Paul was an exception to the rule. Ron Paul was a founding father type of statesman. Okay, so Ron Paul was not super corruptible. He wasn't, doing back deals with the lobbyists and hiding those things from us. And that's why we respect him a lot. But a lot of these other politicians, they may in public say that, oh, we're going to support the Audit the Fed bill. And then, it gets watered down like the last Audit the Fed bill that Ron Paul got before he left Congress. Look how watered down it was. It ended up being a partial one-time audit. And look at the crazy stuff we found in the one-time partial audit. Without that one-time partial audit, we wouldn't have known that during the 2008 financial crisis, over $19 trillion in currency swaps, liquidity injections, zero interest rate debt and bailout money was given to foreign central banks, foreign corporations, pretty much anyone that was large enough to potentially set off a chain reaction to collapse the system and create counterparty risk. So I don't know at this point. I would think that the risks are so much larger, DK. The banks are so much larger than they were prior to 2008, and they're merging the banks still. So we're seeing in Europe right now, the European banking crisis should have already happened, I think, and we won't know this because I don't think there's going to be any auditing of the European Central Bank. They're not going to publicly announce this. The Federal Reserve, we'll see if they get a real audit or not. Even if they get a partial audit, I don't know if we'd even find this out for sure. But my suspicion is based on research and sources I've talked to that there's been trillions of dollars in currency swaps already to Deutsche Bank and so many of these other European banks so they don't go bankrupt immediately. Now we're seeing, Monte dei Paschi in Italy being nationalized. The largest bank in Ukraine was nationalized. There's going to be a lot more that are either going to be nationalized or broken up. The funny thing, though, about the banks is that, did you see the press release that the Federal Reserve, I did a short video on this a month or so ago. Federal Reserve released a weird press release. It went to Yahoo Finance. I'm not sure if it went all over the mainstream financial media, but Yahoo Finance released it. And it basically said the Federal Reserve and European Central Bank did these stress tests on the American and European banks, and they said they only need about $70 billion in capital injections for the next financial crisis, but that the central banks weren't going to do any more like direct bailouts of the banks, but that they were going to force the banks to sell more bank shares, which is equity, or they were going to force the banks to sell a combination of bank stocks and then long-term bank debt. And then I was thinking to myself, who in their right mind, given, the problems with the banks, we know these banks have gotten even larger as too big to fail banks, which would not have occurred in a free market without, implicit bailout guarantees from governments, central banks, taxpayers, and potentially bail-ins down the road, a combination of these things. Who in their right mind, as a private sector investor, would buy bank shares, would buy long-term bank debt when they're seeing evidence that, nothing has been really fixed in a material way since 2008 to prevent the system from collapsing. So I'm thinking that press release was kind of like a trial balloon to say that, we're going to do a combination of backdoor bailouts with those currency swaps and other liquidity injections. Maybe they'll start injecting SDR too as well, because the globalists right now are still in power. Although we have, the nationalists now, we have nationalists winning key battles, whether it's Brexit, Donald Trump, the Italian referendum. It looks like France is going to, Marine Le Pen in the spring is going to potentially win there too. So France may leave the European Union. She's talking about going back to the French franc. So it'll be interesting to see. The globalists are fighting this. This is a tug of war. This is a tug of war we have between globalism and economic nationalism. And the banks are directly involved. As long as the people that are still in power when things get worse with the banks, they are going to keep doing, these hidden backdoor bailouts with whatever the liquidity programs are named. Right now, the largest liquidity backdoor bailouts are currency swaps. And then, I think also that press release, I think they're setting it up to go after people's retirement accounts. So your 401ks, your IRAs, your teachers' retirement accounts. I think what's going to happen is they're going to say, maybe for the sake of national security, they're going to say everyone who has one of those retirement accounts, whether you're in the U.S. or Europe, you're going to have to put in 1 or 2%. And it's either going to go into a combination of government bonds, you're going to have to buy bank shares, or you're going to have to buy bank bonds, or some combination. And we all know how the governments work. We see this through past history, is the governments and the globalists and the elites in power do things in increments. So once the camel gets its nose under the tent with, 1 or 2%, they're going to try to see how much more they can increase that. And then if it's too much, they'll back off, they'll wait X amount of years, and then they'll try it again. So I think, unfortunately, that's the way things are going. So there's still a tug of war, a fight in progress right now over that. And I think 2017, that's another major thing in 2017, is we have a big fight between globalism versus nationalism. I'm a libertarian, so I would at least, nationalism is not as bad as this version of the elite's globalism that we have right now. So, I love what the United States stood for with the founding fathers, low taxes. Our rights were protected by the Constitution, and the military and the government were supposed to protect our rights. Now it seems, unfortunately, that they're using the laws against the citizens, and the government is protecting itself from the citizens and stripping our rights and stripping our money with taxes and inflation.
Could you talk to us a little bit about the impact you see in 2017 of the sweeping trend of higher minimum wage across multiple states?
Well, I think it's going to accelerate trends that we already had going on. I think it's unfortunately because politicians don't understand real economics. They just see that, I can get more votes if I promise a higher wage, right? So I can get more votes from the working class and the living poor that think that it'll mean a higher standard of living for them. But the people who are voting for a higher wage, they don't understand that this could accelerate the investment in touchscreens, automation, robotics. So if you thought you were going to get a higher paying fast food job or server job or some of the other potential jobs that can be rapidly disrupted through touchscreens and automation, it could backfire on you if you're a voter. This comes down to studying real economics and understanding Marx's labor theory of value. So basically, if non-market forces, so politicians or bureaucrats, try and force wages higher, private sector business owners, corporations, small businesses, they're not going to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to do this. My costs are going up. If you raise the minimum wage from $10 an hour to $15 an hour, if you're a small restaurant owner, that's a huge gut punch. That's a huge higher cost. So that's going to affect the restaurant owner in a lot of really difficult ways. They're going to have to maybe reduce their employees from full-time to part-time. They're going to maybe reduce the size of the portions on the menu to try to make up the lost profit margin. So maybe they keep the menu price the same, reduce the portion by 30%. To make up for the rapid increase in labor costs. So there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences there. I think, the minimum wage being raised, I think it's going to accelerate the investment by corporations because they have cheap capital available still to invest in robotics and automation. And, I think it's going to force some small businesses to potentially close. So either the investment won't be made in the small business to expand, or small businesses will downsize or close altogether, because they can't afford the cost increases. So hopefully Trump will be able to maybe reduce the other taxes and other regulations besides the minimum wage to offset that. So small business owners who are being maybe killed with the increases of the minimum wage, they will have some cost savings elsewhere. But it's really difficult to predict the exact ways that there's going to be affected. Frederick Bastiat talked about this. Henry Hazlitt talked about this. Economics in One Lesson, which is one of the best economic books ever written. Your listeners should definitely buy that. Actually, they should give it as a gift. I know it's after Christmas now. But, if someone's birthday is coming up, it's a really good beginner's book for free market and Austrian school economics. It's a very simple and easy to read book. Young kids could even read it, or someone with no business or economics background. And basically, Bastiat talked about this and Henry Hazlitt expanded on it. It's about the seen and the unseen. So there are things that we can see with the what the politicians are trying to do by raising the minimum wage. They're trying to buy votes. They're trying to say, look, we raised wages and that means the economy is doing better. They're going to come out with that rhetoric. But there's the unseen then, the unintended consequences, the things that come years later that we don't know what's going to happen, although we can make, educated guesses and speculations. And I think one of those is more robotics and automation. And unless Trump is able to fix some of the other problems with rules, regulations, and taxes for small and medium-sized businesses in the U.S., it's going to hurt those businesses.
Could you talk to us a little bit about another mega trend we're seeing over the last year and going into 2017 is just a complete collapse of the ability for people to earn anything on their savings. And a corollary to that is about a story that came out in just this last week saying that 62% of Americans don't even have $1,000 in emergency savings. Can you talk to us about what you think could be the driving factors behind that, and what is that an indicator of? You say watch the money. What's that an indicator of the common person?
Well, first of all, a lot of people ask me, what should I do? How should I learn how to invest? What asset classes should I invest in? And the first thing I ask them is, it seems like you want to invest, you want to learn. Do you have any savings? And a lot of people who ask me that question don't have any savings yet. So, before you actually make investments, you have to have some savings first. And that's easier said than done now. We live in the real world, there's lots of inflation and taxes. Okay, the governments, whether it's China, Japan, United States, Europe, they're all lying about the real inflation in the real economy. So the inflation that we have competitive currency devaluations. We have these governments that are coordinating with each other. And that is like the US, Japan, the UK, the ECB. These guys are coordinating with each other on currency devaluations, and that's hurting the guy on Main Street more than it's hurting the rich guy with a lot of cash in the bank already, because the rich people all have a lot of assets, whether that's art, precious metals, stocks, bonds, real estate. So they're more diversified. They have lots of assets, and asset prices have been going up a lot artificially due to devalued currency. But the guy on Main Street, it's very tough with inflation and taxes increasing, with the lack of high-paying full-time jobs in so many different countries in Western Europe and in the United States. It's going to be very tough to get savings. So I talked about this on our previous interview, that people are going to have to be entrepreneurial and creative. So just because you and other people in your family have good jobs now doesn't mean you shouldn't look for an extra stream of income, whether that's setting up a part-time business or buying a rental property if you have enough assets to do so, or being creative or things like that. So people are going to have to, because unfortunately I see more inflation and taxes increasing, even with Trump in office. I think there's going to be there's huge pension shortfalls, DK, in a lot of different states. And I think, CalPERS and CalFERS, which are the two largest pension funds in California, they're in Sacramento right now lobbying California residents for higher and higher taxes to make up for those enormous pension fund shortfalls. So I talked about being in an economic minefield earlier in the interview. One of the largest landmines we have is this huge pension fund crisis. All over the United States, pension funds at many different levels are drastically underfunded, 4 to 7 times underfunded in many cases. Not all of them, but a good amount of them. And there's even been a run on a pension fund already in Dallas among the police officers. So I expect that to be the new normal going forward. Meg Whitney had talked about that years ago. She was a few years early. But now in this interest rate environment that we have, that's just a weird manipulated interest rate environment, I think it's going to be very, very tough for people to figure out savings when there's going to be more inflation and taxes coming. So people are going to have to learn. If you don't have the skills to figure out how to get an extra business, then you're going to have to add the skills first. So invest in education, invest in yourself, whether that's get an Audible audiobook subscription or go to the library and check out some used books. Maybe you like cars. Maybe you can help repair cars, or maybe you can repair computers. Or maybe you're a good cook, and maybe your wife's a good cook, and maybe you can do a little catering side business on the weekend and make a couple extra $100 a month, and that gives you a little bit more savings to buy some more physical gold and silver, or a little bit of Bitcoin, or something else. But there's so many different options there. It just depends on the person's passion, because if you're not, the one thing that anyone listening to your podcast, no matter how much money they have, the one thing that they have in common with a billionaire is that they have the same amount of time in each day. Now, a billionaire has, more of might have more of a structured schedule, but they still have the same amount of time to choose to do what they want with. So if you have a lot of free time now, go and learn another skill. Go and read some books. Go and take some online video courses in something that interests you or passionate about you that you can learn to make some additional income in. But that's what it's going to take, DK, in order to build additional savings. An online business right now, building an online side business, is also the easiest way because there's not a lot of rules and regulations on most of the products and services you sell online. So there's not huge government interference. There's not huge barriers of entry right now. It's becoming more efficient in order to build a business online for now, at least in the United States. Now, I've spoken with friends in other countries in Europe, and it's not the same story. But if you're an American, you have a tremendous advantage right now.
Income and how people are managing their finances. We've talked with several of our recent guests about the specter of a cashless society and why that is a cave canary or an example of what's happening here and how that is happening around us. You mentioned about the camel's nose being under the tent, where that's already happening, and what are the likely risks that brings to the ordinary person?
Well, it looks like this is not for sure, but there's a good amount of evidence that the U.S. is involved in turning this lab experiment in India with Modi. And I don't know if you remember this, but when Modi won the election, he was supposed to be pro-business and pro-gold. So obviously that's definitely not true. He seems to be pro-globalist and a puppet, basically, doing what the central bankers and the elites want him to do. India's economy is a very interesting economy. It's very corrupt, too, as well. It's very bureaucratic. The average GDP per capita, I think, is only like $1,700 per person. There's excellent interviews from Jayant Bhandari going around the internet. Maybe you should have him on your podcast for more coverage on India. He's the India expert. But when I've read his articles and listened to his interviews, a large amount of the Indian population doesn't even have access to the internet. They're not very well educated, and they don't have there's not great schooling in many parts of India, and a lot of them don't even have smartphones. So why are they trying to, when so much of the population is on a cash economy, right, with actual paper bills, why are the politicians in India trying to force people who don't have experience using digital economy and using, smartphones and the banking system into that? So I think this is very nefarious. And if you look at the white papers and the books of these ivory tower academic PhD Keynesian economists like Ken Rogoff, Larry Summers, Paul Krugman, there's a number of other ones, but those are the main ones that keep, going on TV and doing the interviews and talking about this. And they say how beneficial a cashless society would be, and how, only criminals use cash, or drug dealers or other criminals use cash now. And we've seen, Ken Rogoff with The Curse of Cash book talk about not only banning $100 bills, he wants to ban $20 bills. Yeah,
wow.
Welcome to dystopia, buddy. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I don't know if I want to go in the head of these guys. I mean, these guys are not stupid people. I mean, they might be big government apologists. They might be shills for the banks or the global elites, but they're not stupid. They just don't have the same moral compass that people like you and me do. I'm a libertarian. I believe in Austrian school economics. I want to be left alone. I don't mind paying some taxes, like Ron Paul says, a small amount of taxes, as long as the government leaves me alone for the most part. Yeah. But, and this is part of this tug of war that I said is going on in 2017, where, the state is becoming the global elites in power, and the academics just keep doubling down on things that don't work. They've doubled down on, the economic, monetary and economic policies. They've doubled down on these negative interest rates and cashless society stuff. Unfortunately, DK, with the cashless society and negative interest rates, I think it's only going to get worse before it gets better in many different countries. I know for a fact that there's 90 central banks all over the globe testing out, taking the key technology behind Bitcoin, the blockchain technology, and converting it to government-issued digital blockchain currency. So the government then would ban cash, force you as a citizen in whatever country in order to use their digital government debt-based fiat currency. And then they would track and tax every transaction. And then once we're in an economy like that, what's to stop them from putting a VAT tax, a value-added tax on? What's to stop them from, if the Democrats gain control of both houses of Congress again, what's to stop them from putting a carbon cap and trade tax on every single transaction? Even if you just buy me lunch, right, and I pay you back with the Bitcoin, or I pay you back with the new government issued digital currency, the government could, tax every single transaction going back and forth, even if it's not a profit, even if it's just me paying you back. So, I hope this doesn't happen. But, I think this is, as long as the people who are in power right now, and this includes these academics that have so much credibility from the fake news mainstream media that's issuing lots of propaganda, and, the apparatus that is the parasite of large, big government, as long as this apparatus is still in power, it seems to me they want to go more towards totalitarianism. But it is a good sign that we are seeing, the people on the street who listen to your podcast, they are fighting back with their vote. Obviously don't go on the streets and fight back. That's dangerous. But I mean, do it legally, do it with your vote, educate people around you what's really going on. And, we're seeing key battles won in the globalists who want a totalitarian government and think that they can, just continually steal from us with perpetual inflation and taxes. We are seeing people start to wake up and react to this.
Last topic, if we could, is you've already mentioned on one timeless preparedness principle, and that's adding skills and adding streams of income. Any other advice that you can give to ordinary people on Main Street on how they're going to survive and thrive in 2017?
Choose yourself. Choose yourself. I've talked about this in past interviews. James Altucher, he has a book out on this. He was a technology entrepreneur, and he got fired from a lot of different jobs. He also built businesses that were worth many millions of dollars, and then he lost the money, and he still came back. So if he can make millions of dollars and come back, almost anyone can do it. It just requires mental toughness. Psychology and mental toughness are important, and learning to deal with, crazy things going around you. And this is what we see right now. I live right outside of Washington, D.C. The stuff that was going on with Deplorable is really bad. And, my friends expected this kind of stunt to happen with the Deplorable. And that's why a lot of them were too scared to buy a ticket and go. But, the dating scene around here in D.C. is bad. I mean, it's important. If you have like a good friends or family member support group, I think a key support group is very important. So make sure that, you, instead of going to therapy per se, having like friends that you can talk about stories with and work out problems with, that'll be at least somewhat sympathetic to things you're going through and maybe help you solve some problems, whether that's a wife or a husband or a partner, or a good support staff of friends and family members. I think that's probably more important than having all the money in the world. Because, I know a lot of rich people, and they're not particularly happy people because they have so much of their time. Earlier in the interview, I was talking about how one thing that any person out there and a billionaire have in common is they each have 24 hours in a day. But billionaires are so busy that they don't have time necessarily to hang out with family and friends, and they lose relationships. So make sure that you have a key support group of friends and family members that at least maybe they don't have to agree with you on everything and see the world completely the way you do, but at least like they see things enough to trust you, and they can talk to you and have conversations, or find a support group of gold and silver bucks that are tired of the gold and silver manipulation that you can vent on. Besides just, having extra money coming in for savings and investment purposes. Because mental health is going to be important, unfortunately, I think, with what is to come. The dystopian reality that we have now, as long as the people in power have that power, they're going to try to make things tougher for people like us. I mean, look at the stuff they've tried to do to the, on YouTube. I don't know about your ad revenue and your views, but 3 or 4 months ago, they cut our views in half.
Yeah.
With the Google algorithm, they cut our views in half. we were doing the same amount of content, trying to put out quality content, trying to grow our business online. And, the elites who are running Google or Alphabet or whatever the hell they call it right now, they just decided all of a sudden that anyone promoting who has certain tags with, I don't know, gold, silver, fake news, whatever, they don't announce what's in their algorithm. But the people in the independent media and alternative media, they just screwed us over and cut us in half. As we speak, and this has happened with other guests, we have adopted, we have experienced exactly what you're describing. Our revenue got cut in a fraction by them turning off monetization. They're saying these are not advertiser-friendly content, which is laughable because there's plenty of advertisers who really would like to have this demographic and these people who are taking things seriously able to be able to take use of their services and their products, but that's not the real reason. And we've heard about this widely across the preparedness community and alternative news broadcasters, is this idea of censorship by even the alternative media. And so what we've had to do is, instead of just using YouTube as our landing page of our website, we separated out a true private website, and we publish people can subscribe there at reluctantpreppers.com for free. And what we do is we publish the full descriptions and notes of our interviews for our subscribers, and which we cannot post. As you mentioned, there's all kinds of keywords, and I've stumbled across all kinds of them, and keep learning the lesson the hard way. Is I thought surely this won't raise anybody's feathers. Nope, that one's not advertiser friendly either. So there's a very concerted push to only get one narrative out there, and anything that talks about about half the things that you've talked about in this interview, I won't be able to publish these notes, but anybody who wants to get the full notes from this, just go to www.reluctantpreppers.com, sign up for free. We'll get you on the email list, and you'll get all the notes. So it's absolutely true, and it's necessary, as you mentioned, for people to network with each other, because even the alternative media space is no longer friendly to people who are seeking liberty. Yep. And to add to your points there before you wrap up the interview, the alternative video sites, like my friend David Seaman, he's been trying, YouTube has been deleting his videos, demonetizing them on Pizzagate and so many other things that he's covered. So he was looking for alternatives on Vimeo, which is one of the other popular ones. Not only do you have to pay to upload videos for the space, but the co-founder of the company is friends with Hillary Clinton and connected to that group. And then the new one, vid.me, I don't think they're promoting political videos on the front page anymore. So maybe there's an entrepreneurial opportunity out there for a libertarian who's good at coding, or an investor combined with a coder, to make an independent media video website there to host that. And, maybe on a subscription model or some type of advertising platform, get advertisers there who can support that. But, we need backup plans, because I don't know how much longer YouTube is going to be able for us to even post our content on there anymore. Right. Hey, I wanted one more anecdote here to follow up with your comment earlier on the study that came out and said that 62% of Americans have less than $1,000 in emergency savings. There was a counterpoint article written in Forbes magazine on that is very telling and thought-provoking. For the longest time, if you hold people up a dollar bill and ask them, what is this? And they'll tell you, it's money. And you say, no, it's not really money. You try to explain what it is and talk about how it actually represents debt. And that anyway, the gist of the article is, don't worry about people not having money in savings, because they can always have access to credit. So as long as they have access to credit, they're perfectly safe. So the transformation is complete. The jaws of the trap have snapped shut, and we are no longer permitted to think about how we need to have assets or own anything. Don't worry, you have access to credit. You can always go in debt and be subject, a debt slave. So you're perfectly safe. You should be content with that. So thank you, Forbes, for that reassurance. Well, Forbes normally lets libertarians post, so they must have that. They have a lot of libertarian. Steve Forbes goes to Freedom Fest, so I wouldn't say Forbes is fully libertarian, but they at least have libertarian article writers. I know one of the guys writes the Austrian TMS on there, the True Money Supply. So they do have some libertarian coverage. That writer must have just not been libertarian. Yeah. But the whole thing with savings, though, I mean, one way to tell if an economy is doing well as an Austrian school economist is if there's a large savings rate. So, this is said that during Obama's administration, he was claiming that the economy was recovering and doing well. And now we see with the savings rate that there was a sign that the economy was not doing as well as he claimed in order to get reelected. So, not only that, if you do have a high income, and there's lots of people with high incomes right now who blow all their money. So, they need to learn to do better, or otherwise they're going to have to be working for most of their lives. And there's no guarantee that they're going to keep their job because corporations are routinely looking for new ways to either downsize or replace you with someone who will work longer and cheaper, or even maybe not even a person anymore.
Just a touch screen, yeah.
Well, the thing is, robots, it's estimated in the next couple decades that robots are really going to start disrupting white-collar jobs.
Yep.
So they haven't displaced a huge amount of white-collar jobs yet, but they're going to start going after white-collar jobs because robotics are really accelerating now going forward.
Well, I haven't searched this yet to see whether I can coin this term or if it's too late if somebody else has already got it, but I would like to coin the term the jobless economy because it sounds like that's what we're heading into, so...
Well, there was the jobless recovery, right? Which
yep, that's true.
I don't count that as a recovery, but the people in power, the Keynesian economists and the politicians did, and Wall Street did. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know if there's that term already used or not, but the jobless recovery was one of them, which I thought was just comedy.
If anybody is an old classic TV buff and we were just watching the other night a classic episode from season 5 of The Twilight Zone with Rod Serling, and I don't know the exact title, but it's something like the Brain Center at Whipple Manufacturing. It talks about this very principle as seen back from the classic days of a economy in the world in which people are being replaced increasingly by machines and what that does to the people. So check it out if you get a chance. Well, Jason Burack from Wall Street, from Main Street, you're always a refreshing viewpoint to have here because you're always in our corner of the common person, and we'd love to have you back again on Reluctant Preppers.
Sure, no problem. I always enjoy my discussions with you guys, and keep up the good work. I try to listen to you guys when I can. I enjoy your coverage of healthier food because that's something also that I've been dealing with. I had a lot of very serious health problems that were related to very bad food that was offered in the mainstream. So I've changed my diet a lot the last couple years, and I've started to see good results.
Watch for the next week because we've got another interview coming up with Joel Salatin, our activist farmer from Polyface Farms in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. He's going to be with us this week, so keep your eyes out and watch for that one. All right. Thanks, Jason.
My pleasure.